Chapter 211, Shen Feng. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. Zhang Yuochen shook his head. Even though he had strong spiritual powers, at the most he could sense danger. He knew that he could not always trust his intuition. Huang Yanshan entered the mountain spirit temple and resumed practicing. Blackie built a fire and began to roast a savage beast he had scrounged up. The enticing aroma of meat began wafting from it. The darkness grew and a cold breeze blew in from the mountains, fanning the fire to new heights. The wind increased in strength and began to whistle as it blew by. At some point, flakes of snow began to fall. Soon, it began to snow harder and harder until the flakes as thick as goose down. After half an hour, the entire mountain was buried under snow like a silver-wrapped package. It was icy cold and the wind roared like a giant, mournful beast. Snowflake Eagle was left behind on the fog-hidden lake. We left in too much of a rush to bring him along. Zhang Yuochen sat cross-legged by the fire, speaking as if to himself. Blackie held a giant piece of roast meat between his claws and talked as he ate. Snowflake Eagle is a third-level savage beast. After all, they possess a certain level of intelligence. If you didn't return, he probably just flew back to Yanwu City. Huang Yanshan stopped practicing and opened a beautiful, jewel blue eye. Her eyelashes fluttered and she stared at Blackie, who was munching away happily. "I'm amazed a cat knows so much," she said. "Perhaps you are the best of the savage beasts?" Blackie's round eyes stared, and he replied, "What about the best? I am the king of slaughter. I lost count of how many bests I have eaten." Huang Yanshan looked at Blackie and only found him amusing. She didn't believe him at all. "Blackie, did you roast that meat?" "Naturally." Blackie puffed out his chest and said proudly, "The green fire deer tastes pretty good. Would you like a piece?" "I'll try some." Huang Yanshan replied. Swish. Huang Yanshan crooked her finger and her jade-white snow dragon sword flew from its scabbard and proceeded to slice off a kilogram of roasted meat, which landed in her hands. Huang Yanshan's sword had been confiscated by the Tarantula Chamber of Commerce, so Zhang Yuochen had lent her the snow dragon sword to use. Huang Yanshan had to admit, Blackie's roast was first-rate. It tasted incredible. Even someone who didn't eat much meat, like Huang Yanshan, enjoyed it greatly. Of course, Huang Yanshan ate a lot more gracefully than Blackie. She used two slender fingers to pick apart a piece of meat before placing it between her crystal lips. She chewed slowly and silently. Suddenly, Blackie's ears twitched and he glanced towards the door. "Zhang Yuochen, you're not reincarnated from a crow, are you?" he asked. Naturally, Zhang Yuochen and Huang Yanshan heard footsteps outside. The sound was very light. If Zhang Yuochen hadn't prepared for such a possibility, it was unlikely that he would have noticed anything over the sound of the wind and snow. The footsteps came closer and closer. Someone had already entered the temple. A young man, about 20 years old, walked in. He brushed the snow from his clothes and stared in surprise at the two humans and cat in front of him. "It has been snowing all night, and I have found nowhere to rest. I thought I would take shelter from the cold and the wind here. I didn't think I would find other people here. I am Shen Feng, an internal disciple of the Yantai suzerain. I hope I did not disturb you." Huang Yanshan had gone on high alert immediately, but after hearing the man say he was a disciple of Yantai suzerain, she relaxed her guard and lowered the snow dragon sword in her hand. "Shen Feng, I have heard of your name. You are ranked 9th in the Yantai suzerain, and you have already reached the completion of the Earth realm. I heard that you once battled a legendary warrior of the Heaven realm and managed to last 3 attacks. Although you sustained heavy injuries and were defeated, you made your name through that one battle." Shen Feng was quite a gentleman. He looked at Huang Yanshan with joy in his eyes. "You recognize me?" he replied. "That honors me indeed. You look like a fairy, an angel come to earth. I didn't think I would meet such a beautiful woman here in a temple in the wild mountains. Perhaps this is fate." At any other time, if someone had spoken to her like this, Huang Yanshan would certainly have cut out his tongue. However, Huang Yanshan felt rather proud. She glanced towards Zhang Yuochen and saw that he was still talking with Blackie about something and was not paying any attention to what Shen Feng had said. She could not help but feel irritated, and she said, "Junior brother Chen, Did you not see Master Shen arriving? Master Shen is a master of the Yuntai suzerain, and his cultivation is far above yours. Don't you want to greet him? Zhang Yuochen gently patted Blackie's head as if he had finished telling him something. Standing up, he gave Shen Feng a small salute and said, "Greetings, Elder Brother Shen." The Yuntai suzerain and the martial market school are working together to defeat the black market and the moon worship demonic sect now, so we can be considered brothers of the same family. Please feel at home. Have a seat. So you are both students of the martial market school. Shen Feng smiled and made himself at home. He walked straight to Huang Yanjun, smiled, saluted, and sat down next to her. He looked towards Zhang Yuochen and asked, "Junior brother Chen is an internal student of the martial market school?" Zhang Yuochen nodded, "Yes." Shen Feng looked around and said, "You look like you are less than 20 years old. To be able to become an internal student at such a young age is indeed an achievement. I am curious though, why do you wear a mask?" Zhang Yuochen smiled, but did not answer Shen Feng's question. Rather he asked one of his own, "Since you are a strong warrior at the completion of the Earth Realm, why don't you have even a single mount?" Shen Feng replied, "I do have a mount, but I have come to the Yunwu Commandery to defeat the heretics from the black market and the moon worship demonic sect. I didn't bring it when I left the suzerain. According to my knowledge, there are no towns within 300 miles of here. This is considered a wasteland area of the Yunwu Commandery. There shouldn't be any heretics here from the black market for the demonic sect. How did you come to be here?" Zhang Yuochen continued to ask. Shen Feng smiled and replied, "It is my first time here in the Yunwu Commandery, and I didn't know there were no towns around here. Otherwise, I wouldn't have needed to come here to rest." Huang Yanchen felt that something wasn't right. She glared at Zhang Yuochen and said, "Junior brother Chen, Master Shen is a master from the Yuntai suzerain. Why are you asking him all this? You don't think that he is an evil warrior from the black market, do you?" "I think junior brother Chen suspects me. I guess I must prove my identity." Shen Feng immediately took out a token and handed it to Huang Yanjun. Yuntai suzerain was carved on one side, while the other had Shen Feng engraved upon it. It was exactly like the waste tokens given to internal students of the Yuntai suzerain. After Huang Yanjun ensured the authenticity of the token, she returned it to Shen Feng. Zhang Yuochen replied quietly, "I was just asking casually." Huang Yanjun's almond-shaped eyes glared at Zhang Yuochen again. "Junior brother Chen, you are too suspicious. Given Master Shen's cultivation, he could defeat us easily. Why would he resort to such methods?" "Thank you for your trust." Shen Feng smiled. "What is your name, lady?" he asked. Huang Yanchen was just about to say her name when Zhang Yuochen suddenly stood up and looked outside. He said, "People are coming." "Who is coming?" Huang Yanchen asked. Zhang Yuochen closed his eyes and immersed his genuine qi into his ears and counted. He said, 15 kilometers away, there are at least 200 people approaching. Judging by their sense, they are evil warriors from the moon worship demonic sect. If I am right, King Shan has caught up with us. Zhang Yuochen stared at Blackie and sent him a signal. Then he walked towards the outside of the temple. Shen Feng watched Zhang Yuochen leave and a mocking gaze flashed through his eyes. He looked at Huang Yanchen and asked, "How could the people of the Tarantula Chamber of Commerce follow you here?" Huang Yanchen was not guarded against Shen Feng and her face was serious. She did not notice that Shen Feng had a silver needle protruding from his finger. She said, "They are here to capture me. Actually, I am here to capture you as well." A strange smile appeared on Shen Feng's face and his arm lunged forward. The silver needle glittered between his fingers and it was aimed directly at the center of Huang Yanjun's forehead, as he wanted to seal her qi. Huang Yanjun's expression changed dramatically. She did not expect Shen Feng to attack her at all. Even if she tried to dodge, it would be too late. Shen Feng's smile widened as he saw success approaching. Just before Shen Feng's needle struck, a meow came from near his ear and a black shadow streaked by. Blackie's claws were sharper than knives, and they left 3 deep scratches on Shen Feng's arm as they flashed through the air, severing the arteries and nerves. If Shen Feng had not pulled his arm back quickly, he would have lost it. "You!" Shen Feng stared at the cat with fear in his heart. He was a warrior at the completion of the Earth Realm. Even if he was distracted, he couldn't be hurt by a cat. Blackie licked the fresh blood from his claws and said, Don't look at me like that. As the king of slaughter, I consider it a failure that I didn't manage to kill you in one strike. What are you? Huang Yanjun retreated and drew out the snow dragon sword. She assumed a defensive position and stared coldly at Shen Feng. Shen Feng pulled back his right hand and recovered his calm expression. He believed he only needed one hand to defeat Huang Yanjun at his level of cultivation. As for that cat, it could only hurt him through stealthy attacks. Shen Feng smiled. It won't hurt to tell you. I am indeed the disciple of Yuntai Suzerain, Shen Feng. Of course, that is my public identity. My identity in the Tarantula Chamber of Commerce is the disciple of the young Lord of Poisonous Spider. Huang Yanjun was very angry, and her eyes were very cold. How did you find our tracks? Shen Feng looked at Huang Yanjun like she was stupid. He smiled and said, Your Majesty, did you think only the Tarantula Chamber of Commerce wants you dead? There is another, even more powerful than the young lord, who is on his way here. If you fall into the hands of the young lord, at least you will survive. But if you fall into the other person's hand, death is the only possible path. If you clever, then you will calmly surrender now and not force me to act.